Thank you for joining us for the workshop Creating and Sharing Custom GPTs. This workshop is part of Levy Library's AI and ChatGPT series. My name is Carrie McKee, Director of Access Services for the Levy Library, and joining me today is my colleague Becca Neal, our Digital Library Administrator. Before we dive into the topic, I want to highlight that this is just one of 7 workshops in our series. All of our AI courses are foundational and meant to provide you with an overview of each of the subtopics listed in this graphic. We invite you to view any other subtopics. Some are designed for educators, instructors, and mentors who are looking to explore AI-driven teaching strategies, and others are designed for students and staff who want to master fundamentals of AI tools like ChatGPT. So today, we're taking the next step forward and exploring a topic that's reshaping how we think about artificial intelligence in our daily workflows, custom GPTs. I'd like to walk you through what you can expect to learn from the session today. We're going to break this down into 4 key areas, each one designed to build your confidence and capability with this powerful tool. First, we're going to start with the basics. What exactly is a custom GPT? We'll explain how these models are different from general-purpose AI tools and how customizing them can solve common challenges, such as vague or overly generic responses. You'll see how tuning a model to fit specific needs can dramatically boost accuracy, relevance, and overall usability, making these tools far more effective and responsive in the real world. Next, we'll explore a variety of real-world use cases where custom GPTs can make a difference, whether it's improving customer service workflows, generating more impactful content, or supporting research and academic tasks. We'll look at how to spot the best opportunities for using a custom GPT to your advantage. Next, we'll guide you through the process of building a custom GPT from the ground up. We'll talk about how to gather your requirements, set up your model, and how to refine it based on your unique goals. Our aim is to leave you feeling empowered and ready to start building models that work for you. And finally, we'll share strategies for sharing and deployment. Whether you're planning to use your GPT within your own team, a set of peers, or you want to make it widely available to a larger audience. We'll share some practical tips on how to distribute your models securely, effectively, and in a way that ensures maximum impact. By the end of this workshop, you'll have a clear roadmap on how to integrate custom GPTs into your projects, enhance your day-to-day workflows, and share your innovations with others. While generic AI models are incredibly powerful, they often fall short when it comes to delivering precise, content-specific responses. This is where custom GPTs come in. By tailoring a model to your personal, academic, or organizational needs, you can generate responses that are relevant, targeted, and effective. Let's go over different types of ChatGPT accounts and how they impact your ability to create, use, and share custom GPTs. Free ChatGPT accounts offer access just to the base model. You can use pre-built GPTs created by OpenAI or other organizations or individuals. You can't create your own. You don't have the ability to upload files, use integration tools, and the memory is limited to that single session. If you have a personal paid account, such as a ChatGPT Plus subscription, you get access to more powerful models and you have the ability to create custom GPTs. You can also fine-tune the AI to provide content-specific responses, and you have the ability to shape its behavior. However, there's still no API access or organizational level data and security controls. If you have an organizational or educational account, this provides the most flexibility. Users can create and deploy multiple custom GPTs and integrate them into internal systems, and you have the ability to collaborate across teams within your workspace. These accounts often come with enhanced privacy controls and compliance features, ideal for institutions or organizations working in healthcare, research, or education. It's important to note that access to these features depends on your organization or educational institution's specific setup and policies. Some capabilities may be limited or restricted.
Get into the details of what exactly custom GPTs are. So in a nutshell, custom generative pre-trained transformers, or GPTs, are individualized versions of ChatGPT that can be adapted to serve specific purposes. Just as with ChatGPT, they are trained by prompt engineering, but you can also upload documents to train these GPTs. And finally, they can be customized to perform tasks that might require such abilities as image generation, web searching, and data analysis for GPT users. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, how is that so different from just using ChatGPT? And the answer is that overall, custom GPTs can offer enhanced accuracy, efficiency, and personalization of interactions by retaining the instructions regarding how they should behave and what sorts of information should appear in responses beyond just a single session. ChatGPT's single session memory can be a pretty significant limitation, depending on your use case. Custom GPTs are able to do this by referring to an individually curated knowledge base and a set of instructions, both of which can be altered and updated, rather than depending on ChatGPT's just generic language model training corpus. The possibilities are almost infinite in terms of potential applications for custom GPTs. On the left of this slide, we have some more academically minded applications, such as a virtual course assistant or a tutor for students. And on the right, we have a snapshot of some of the custom GPTs developed by the ChatGPT team that are available to any user with a personal paid account or an organizational or EDU account. Now let's get into the composition of a custom GPT and what you'll be working with if you choose to create one. So first, you will give it a name and a brief description. This information is what the user sees when they're interacting with the GPT. The next step is to train your GPT with a set of instructions for how the GPT should behave when it is asked questions or when it is prompted. And we'll go into more detail later on regarding best practices for composing those instructions. Next, you've got a knowledge base, which is comprised of uploaded files. And I want to take a moment here to note that the instructions and the specialized knowledge base, these two features are the core of how we can minimize some of the information quality issues that are inherent in large language models, namely hallucinations and the social biases reflected in the corpus used to train large language models. By providing specific instructions and a document knowledge base that the GPT is supposed to treat as fact, we can minimize those problematic attributes of standard LLMs like ChatGPT. Moving right along with OpenAI Custom GPTs, you have the ability to assign your GPT any of 4 specific capabilities, which are image generation, searching the open web, using the Canvas interactive coding interface, and code interpretation and data analysis. Finally, you can assign GPT's actions, which are API connections to third-party applications. One example of this could be using the weather.gov APIs to generate weather forecasts for a specific region. Note that currently, GPTs created on the Icahn School of Medicine ChatGPT EDU accounts do not allow these actions. So now we are going to touch on the concept of resource augmented generation, or RAG, as within its relation to GPTs. If you are out and about reading AI literature, you have likely come across RAG as it's often discussed in the context of reducing hallucinations, or when GPTs just kind of make up answers. What this means functionally is that we have generative pre-trained transformers, or GPTs. That's just the large language model with a user-friendly chat interface. The RAG, however, is the function that allows the GPT to pull information directly from a specific source, be that documents or the open web, and then present that to users within the GPT's interface, rather than the GPT just kind of making up things based on what it knows about how language works. So in short, GPTs are text generators. RAG is an information retrieval mechanism. And if we put those two together, you've got a pretty powerful user-friendly tool that can deliver more accurate information in natural language. Not all GPTs use RAG, but if there is web search enabled or document knowledge bases, then RAG is in use. So now we'll go into some best practices for creating GPTs. So the first best practice is that your instructions are going to need to be explicit and detailed, which is really nothing new if you're used to any sort of prompt engineering with ChatGPT. So one suggestion for being explicit and detailed is breaking complex instructions into a series of simple statements, and to consider including things like example prompts. So one example here I've included on the screen. I have included instructions for how to respond when a user asks a question in an unexpected format, or a question that's ambiguous and that there's more context needed. So in this particular case, I want the GPT to refer back to the knowledge base, and I want it to prompt the user with some questions to better understand what the user is actually asking, rather than just making up an answer. The next suggestion would be to consider including descriptions or context of the typical users. In other words, who is going to be using the GPT? So one thing to keep in mind is, maybe are they experts in the topic of the GPT? Are they a novice in what the GPT is trying to do? Or if users have any sort of common attribute. So the example I provided here describes that for the purposes of my GPT, all of the users are going to be affiliated with the Icahn School of Medicine. So that's an example of a common feature that all of my GPT users would have. And then finally, perhaps most importantly, you'll want to include your ideal response characteristics. So in this particular example, I've told my GPT that it should expect novice API users, because the purpose of this GPT is to make APIs more accessible to people who don't have any experience with them. And with that in mind, when my GPT generates an answer or generates a script, it should provide something pedagogical that's going to help teach the user how to use the particular API. Maybe that's explaining or highlighting different pieces of code, or telling the user explicitly where to put things, what sort of Python packages or libraries are necessary, and how to get those. The next best practice is to use Markdown whenever you are writing your instructions. If you're not familiar with Markdown, it is a markup language or a convention that is used to structure and provide context to any sort of digital text. So the image on the left provides examples of common Markdown conventions, such as the pound sign to indicate different section headings in a text, or asterisks for various ways of emphasizing words. Now, when you include these structure elements in your instructions, it's going to be easier for the GPT to parse them as intended. So think of encountering a solid block of text versus a nicely structured document with a clear title, with structured section headings and bold and italics for emphasis, clear lists for formats. That structured document is going to be a lot easier to read and to scan. So on the right, we have an example of one of my instruction sets that includes some different Markdown components like an unordered list or a bulleted list, as well as headings and nested headings to provide a sense of hierarchy within distinct sections of the instructions. Those Markdown conventions transform the plain text here into a structured document like the one you see in this image with clear sections. Now, you don't need to go wild with Markdown, but little bits of structure really go a long way, especially if you have particularly long instruction sets. Finally, we have some best practices regarding uploads and testing. So the first bullet on this slide notes that testing your GPT is an important part of the process here. Iteration is necessary for really dialing in the accuracy and reliability of your GPT's output. GPTs can sometimes respond unexpectedly. So it's good to do lots of training and lots of back and forth with your instructions to really dial in. In this particular day and age, also, information changes rapidly. So you'll want to keep your GPT, as with any tool, up to date as well. Next, while all common file types are supported, Word and text files are going to provide the most readable text structures for the GPT. The text recognition and rendering in PDFs can often be a little unruly, and depending on the source of the PDF, the structural markup, the structure in general but might be lacking. That's not to say all PDFs are bad, but it's something to keep in mind when you are uploading instructions. Next, it's important to keep in mind that users have ways of accessing the documents that you upload, particularly if the code interpreter capability is enabled. You can, of course, dissuade this activity, but large language models are notoriously easy to dupe, even if you don't have code interpreter active. So any measures you put into place will be helpful, but they're not going to be ironclad. And this may not matter for your use case. You might not have any sharing restrictions on the documents that you upload. However, this issue becomes super important if you are considering using proprietary or copyrighted materials to train your GPT. Because if somebody can easily access copyrighted text that you have uploaded, we're then getting into the world of reproducing and redistributing those works, which is not permitted. Finally, for latest guidance, always refer to the OpenAI best practices documentation for writing instructions. They designed the system and they've got great resources for using it. So now we will dive into what it looks like when you are creating a custom GPT. Currently, you are looking at my ChatGPT account, which is part of the Icahn School of Medicine ChatGPT EDU license. So the permissions that you see here are the ones that I have associated with that specific license. We're currently looking at just ChatGPT. However, there is a sidebar on the left side of the screen where I can view my different custom GPTs. So within the Explore GPTs page, we see the different GPTs available to us as users associated with various licenses. And in the upper right corner of the page, you'll note that I can travel to my GPTs. We will not create a GPT right now, but we will go into the edit mode for one of them to look at the nuts and bolts, as it were, of how this is created. So you'll notice first on the left panel, you have two options, create and configure. You can think of these as sort of a choose your own adventure for how you would like to configure your GPT. If you're more of a conversational person, the create panel is a good way to get started. You can talk back and forth with your GPT builder entity here and really dial in things that way. Alternatively, you can go into configure mode for a little more granular approach. You can also use a healthy mix of the two, which is what I've done with a lot of my GPTs. Just to kind of touch on the things we talked about earlier, you'll notice that I have my name and my description, which do appear on the public-facing side of the GPT that you'll notice over on the right side of the screen. Next, we've got my instructions. You'll notice that I have used minimal markdown on these just to indicate different sections. You might be thinking, hey, those are really minimal instructions, and you are correct. This is actually a really long instruction set that I've broken into two pieces. The first is within the actual instruction panel. This discusses just the basic behavior and the users, the things I talked about in the best practices. However, I have a longer list of instructions that goes into really specific details on how the GPT should respond to different types of questions. This is just a way to make the GPT's decision-making move a little quicker if you have particularly long instruction sets to break things down into a knowledge base. You will also note that I have both a text document here and a PDF, so I've not always followed the best practices here. However, the PDF that I've uploaded is a very long PDF that I have not, or didn't really want to go through the motions of transferring to a different file type. I have not noticed any issues with the GPT referring to this PDF or reading it. You'll notice here also we have options for conversation starters. So if you would like to provide your users with example prompts, you can do so here. And they will appear over on the right side, on the public side of the GPT, as selectable prompts that your users can submit. Finally, you'll notice that I have two of the capabilities selected, web search and Canvas. I don't really need code interpretation or DALL-E for this particular case, so I've just selected the two capabilities there. Finally, you will note that I do not have the ability to apply actions. However, if I wanted to do any sort of API connection, if I had a different sort of account, this is where that would happen. So before the demo, we briefly discussed that uploading copyrighted documents to a GPT might present some issues. So here we'll go ahead and talk about those copyright finer points. One thing to keep in mind though, and it's the tricky thing about copyright and fair use of copyrighted materials, is that there is very rarely a simple one-size-fits-all answer. A lot hinges on the context of your use. But in general, if you are considering using copyrighted works to train your GPT, don't create GPTs for the purpose of reproducing or distributing copyrighted works. That's simply not legal. Next, always adhere to the terms of use policies for copyrighted materials. Many indicate that you should not be using resources for AI tools, for training for use in AI tools. A lot of third parties with these sorts of materials will make their terms of use publicly available if you Google them. But if you have any questions, do consult with the library if you are unsure. If those terms are not clear regarding use of materials in AI training, do be conscientious of fair use factors for copyrighted works. If you are unfamiliar with fair use, there are 4 factors for considering fair use of copyrighted materials. The first is the purpose and the character of use. One example would be, is your use commercial versus non-commercial? Fair use is typically going to favor non-commercial uses of works. The next factor is the nature of the work. So think of things like fiction versus nonfiction or scholarly works. The next factor is the amount or substantiality of the work used. And given how easy it is to trick GPTs into providing direct document text, only using portions of documents rather than the whole work might be the move in this case. And then finally, you want to consider the market effect of your use. So in other words, is your use going to lessen the likelihood of other people purchasing the work? If so, that's typically going to be a red flag. There's also, though, something to be said for sharing within organizations when applicable. So one example of that, it would be okay for an Icahn School of Medicine lab to train a custom GPT of their own publications for the internal educational use of trainees in that lab, to get them up to speed on prior work and ask questions, things like that. But it would not be okay to share this more broadly unless the lab held all the copyright to all of those publications included. And then an alternate example here is going to be a GPT trained by open access articles. The example we have here is by PLOS Medicine. The articles in this particular journal carry a Creative Commons license that only requires attribution. It allows for things like sharing, distributing, remixing articles. So in this case, it would be okay to share this GPT widely since those articles are already licensed for that wider sharing and they're already open to everyone.
So here are some things you need to consider before sharing your GPT with others. You want to assess content sensitivity. Before sharing any information, it's critical to evaluate the sensitivity of the content in your GPT. To help you get started in the evaluation process, we recommend asking yourself some questions, such as, is this information classified as protected health information? Does it contain sensitive research data or sensitive administrative details? Perhaps you want to ask what would be the impact of this information if it were accessed by an unauthorized party. You also may want to ask, are there any copyright permissions to consider? By classifying content properly, you can tailor your security measures to match the risk level. This step is essential not only for compliance regulations such as HIPAA, but for also maintaining the trust of our peers, colleagues, and even patients. Next, you want to choose the most appropriate sharing option. This means evaluating different sharing settings available, such as public, internal, or restricted sharing, and aligning them with the data sensitivity. This ensures that any sensitive data or confidential research is only shared with verified, limited audiences using platforms that offer robust security controls. Choosing the right sharing option helps prevent accidental exposure and ensures that sensitive data is only accessible to those who absolutely need it. Next, you want to confirm what sharing options are available with your account type. It's important to know that sharing features you have access to depend on your account type and the system settings. Here's what to consider. Verify specific capabilities of your account, such as encryption options, access permissions, or advanced security features. Consult with your account administrator to understand any limitations or additional features that might be available. By confirming your available options, you ensure that you're making full use of security tools provided by the platform, and you can avoid any unexpected gaps in data protection. Next, you want to use secured sharing practices. Even when you selected the right sharing option, adopting secured practices is crucial. This involves employing strong, unique passwords and enabling multi-factor authentication for added security. You want to utilize encrypted channels or secure platforms when you're transferring sensitive data. And you regularly want to update your security settings, and you want to be vigilant about any potential vulnerabilities. These practices are the backbone of maintaining data integrity and ensuring that systems are resilient against any unauthorized access or breaches. And lastly, you want to create a dedicated test group. Before rolling out a custom GPT across your organization or in the OpenAI marketplace, it's beneficial to establish a dedicated test group. Testing isn't just about finding errors, it's about refinement. Once you've tested responses internally in your creation process, we recommend inviting a diverse group of users to interact with your GPT and provide feedback. This group can pilot new practices in a controlled environment where you have the ability to monitor performance and identify potential issues. This will allow you to gather feedback from your test group and make any necessary adjustments before a wider implementation. And lastly, it'll ensure that when new practices are introduced broadly, they work seamlessly and securely. A dedicated test group acts as a safeguard, ensuring that you are mitigating risks and fine-tuning your processes before full-scale deployment. It's also essential to use this feedback to tweak system instructions, improve prompts, and adjust your responses. And just remember, testing should be an ongoing process with regular updates just to keep your GPT effective and relevant. Once your custom GPT is tested and refined, it's time to share it. But how you share it matters. First, you need to define the audience and the purpose. To do this, you want to start asking some questions like, who is this GPT for? Is it meant for internal teams or peers, external users, or both? What specific problem does this GPT solve? And you should also ask, how will users access and interact with it? For example, if a GPT is designed for internal customer support, you might think about integrating it into your help desk platform. Or if your custom GPT is a research assistant, you could embed it on a library website. To ensure that users get the most out of your GPT, it's critical to provide clear usage guidelines, like how to phrase effective prompts, explaining what the GPT can and cannot do, and the sharing level accuracy or response time users should expect from your GPT. It's important to set realistic expectations. If your GPT isn't designed to provide medical or legal advice, we recommend including disclaimers and reminding users to verify critical information independently. Another thing you need to keep in mind is security and ethical standards. Be sure to follow your educational institution or organization's data privacy policies. You should avoid including or exposing sensitive information. And regularly audit interactions to identify any issues with information and bias. If your GPT covers sensitive topics, it may be wise to have a human review system in place for high-risk inquiries. Lastly, you should monitor and update regularly. Sharing your GPT isn't the end of the journey. You should monitor user interactions, track common questions or issues, and then use that feedback to improve the experience. You also want to schedule regular updates to keep your GPT accurate, relevant, and effective over time. Let's walk through how to share your custom GPT with others, whether you're collaborating with a few colleagues or peers or publishing it for the world. First, when sharing with specific users in your workspace, or if you're part of an organizational or educational instance, in your GPT editor, you should see a share button that's on the top right-hand corner of the screen. When you click it, you have the ability to search for users by email, or you can type in their email address and create an invite to share the GPT with them. Once invited, they'll receive a GPT with a direct link to access your GPT. This makes collaboration pretty quick and easy. Now, let's take a look at broader access options available. If you have a personal paid GPT account, or you have enhanced access through your educational institution or organization. One helpful feature is the ability to create your GPT with the option anyone with a link. This is a simple way to give access without having to send out individual invitations, perfect for wider sharing. For maximum visibility, you may also have the option to publish your GPT to the OpenAI GPT store. This will allow others to discover and use your GPT and may even open up opportunities to collaborate directly with OpenAI or the broader community. Whether you're sharing with a small group or a global audience, these tools make it simple to get your GPT into the right hands. Now, we just want to note that access to third-party custom GPTs, custom GPT creation features, and sharing options may depend on your account type. There are key differences and limitations for those using an organizational or educational account versus a personal free or a personal paid ChatGPT account. If you have an Icahn School of Medicine ChatGPT.edu account, and you're interacting with, developing, or implementing any AI tool within or for the benefit of the Mount Sinai Health System, we recommend checking out the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai framework for scholarly use of AI and the Mount Sinai Health System AI implementation and use policy, just to review the guidelines for responsible, ethical, and effective implementation and use of artificial intelligence. If you have a free or a paid personal ChatGPT account, we suggest contacting OpenAI directly or exploring the OpenAI community knowledge base for the most up-to-date information on features, policies, and support. As we close out today's session on creating and sharing custom GPTs, here are some key takeaways to keep in mind. First, custom GPTs are powerful tools for improving accuracy and efficiency in everything from academic support to professional workflows. By training them with your own instructions and materials, you can create a more personalized and holistic solution. Second, it's important to know what's available with your account type. Free accounts have limited capabilities, while a paid subscription or an educational or organizational account offers expanded access to creation tools, integrations, and collaboration features. Third, thoughtful design is essential. Your GPT should have clear, explicit instructions and an appropriate knowledge base. Testing and refining are the key to delivering useful results with your GPT. Next, when it comes to sharing, do it responsibly. Clearly define your audience and intended use. Be sure to follow compliance policies, whether you're using OpenAI's platform or operating under organizational, educational, or institutional guidelines. And finally, keep your GPTs updated. Monitor how they're being used to make improvements based on feedback, and making sure you're staying aligned with evolving AI best practices and policies. So thank you for joining us today. Now you're equipped with the foundational knowledge to begin creating and sharing your own custom GPTs. To learn more, feel free to explore resource links and the QR codes provided here.